It's a great honour for me to introduce Marta Braun. You will probably know her as Professor of Image Arts and Director of the Graduate Programme in Film and Photographic Preservation and Collections Management. Ryerson University. Marta, you also will probably know some of Marta's books, particularly Picture in Time, the work of Etienne Jules Marey, Edward Muybridge, and a children's book of Muybridge, Muybridge in the Riddle of Locomotion. Marta's about to start work on a book on futurist photography, and I know she's been also commissioned to write a grand statement about the universe as well, of photography, universe of photography. She's a fellow of the Royal Society of Canada. She comes garlanded with our good opinions and honours. So, Marta.
Sorry, we can't hear you if you wouldn't mind speaking up.
Not at all.
Thank you very much.
I actually roll my voice. How's that?
That's good.
Okay, this is going to be hard because I'm reading, so I'll do it like this and tell me if I do it properly. Unlike Edward Muybridge, with whom he shares initials and with whom his name is usually associated in the photographic study of locomotion, Etienne Jules Marey was not a photographer, he was a scientist, actually nowadays called a biophysicist, who used cameras to do his work. His science was physiology, the study of light functions, a field founded in his own lifetime. His aim was to measure such functions in order to reveal the laws that govern them. He believed such functions were measurable because alone among French physiologists of his time, he envisaged the body as an animate machine driven by a complex motor whose workings could be explained by the laws of theoretical mechanics. More, Marey hoped to measure movement, the body's most manifest form of energy, and the most vital characteristic of the human motor, as he put it, the language of life itself. Marey was the first scientist to translate that language, to make recordings of the motion of the body without recourse to the human hand or eye. He adapted machines used in physics, devising a sensor, the little drum that would intercept the movement without interfering with it, a transmitter, the rubber tubing that would relay the movement through space, and a recording device, the rotating cylinder, and the stylus that inscribed upon it that would make the motion permanent. With his graphic method, as he called it, he began by recording the internal dynamics of the body, the circulation of blood and the rhythms of the heart, muscle tremors, lung ventilation, and the body's external kinetics, the run, jump, and walk of human beings, the paces of the horse, and the flight of birds. In every case, he had the movement in his own tracing. In 1878, as he was struggling to graph the elusive motions of flight, as Marey was struggling to graph the elusive motions of flight, Edward Muybridge published these photographs of the gaits of the horse in the popular French science journal La Nature. And while Marey immediately understood that photography offered the means he needed to expand his graphic method, he also insisted that a need for a photographic method that would provide what his graphic method gave him, the visible expression of a continuous passage of time over equidistant and known intervals within a single tracing, and Muybridge's system of batteries and cameras did not do that, as you can see. So after experiments in 1882 with the photographic gun that made 12 sequential images a second on a rotating glass disc, Marey succeeded in decomposing phases of movement on a single fixed plate with a single camera and the slotted disc shutter you see here in real time. These are his first experiments. He writes his name, M-A-R-E-Y, and captures the trajectory of balls. Marey's was a revolutionary method of photography, but totally in keeping with the methodological principles he had established. Muybridge had introduced him to a new sensor, the photographic plate. Light was now the transmitter, and it needed no motor force from the subject, and the slotted disc shutter translated the movement without loss or diminution. Marey created a visual language of fluid, overlapping, two-dimensional forms, still synonymous today with rapid and elegant motion. With this method, however, time and space, the two characteristics of movement, could not be rendered with equal emphasis. If Marey wanted to emphasize the muscular movement, he had to record the phases of movement more slowly, creating gaps. And if he wanted to increase the number of images to render the temporal element more vividly, the speed increase would result in confusing superimposition. So his next step in 1883 was to operate against how we understand photography. That is, that cameras inherently replicate all the detail visible to the eye. It was the camera's duplication of seeming normalcy of vision, as we were talking about before, that Marey had to go beyond in order to find the vision beyond sight. Operating on the subject this time rather than the camera, he eliminated the confusing superimposition. First, as you see here, by covering the offending limbs in black velvet, and then by covering the whole body in black and marking its joints in white. And now he had pure movement, detached from the performer, conveyed in graphic form and a photographic image totally without precedent. He called the method chronophotography. With chronophotography, he analyzed the mechanics of how we actually walk, run, and jump, of how animals with whom we share the planet propel themselves, by substituting small electric light bulbs for the metal buttons and stripes on the body. Marey made the first study of pathological locomotion. In 1888, he substituted film for his glass plates and devised a mechanism to move the film intermittently behind the slotted disc shutter. That marks the technological basis of motion pictures. So, once we understand Marey's scientific name, his scientific aims, then I think, that's one of his films, then I think that Muybridge's 1887 study couldn't be a truer portrait of Muybridge. When we understand Marey, then Muybridge is a puzzle. Funded as a scientific project by the University of Pennsylvania, we have to ask ourselves, what is this about? What physiological laws are being found, for example, in one woman chasing another with a broom, or throwing oneself down in a heap of hay, or how is a kicking a hat representative of locomotive mechanics? As I've shown elsewhere, Muybridge has depended on a scientific-looking environment and a sequenced structure of images that still today directs the scientific reading of his work, one which overlooks the gaps and inconsistencies within it. This is an assemblage of images made at 3 different times. Muybridge wasn't a scientist then, but he was a photographer and a storyteller whose dramas and jokes and fantasies compel us to immediately recognize what we have never seen before. The advent of the motion picture industry, whose technology was based on Marey's graphic method, as I've just shown, would see the fulfillment of all of the fantasies to be found in Muybridge's animal locomotion. Meanwhile, back to Marey, whose science of the human motor changed how the working body was conceived and how it was represented in the social domain. as energy conservation became a social doctrine in 19th century Europe, Marey's graphing and photographing instruments soon became the tools of the trade to decompose workers' movements. In North America and America, Marey's decomposition of motion was complicit in the work of Frederick Taylor and his managerial associates, who removed control of the work process from the worker and placed it in the hands of, at the time, and motion study engineers. Here is a stereo photograph by Frank Bunker Gilbreth, an associate of Taylor, who used Marey's system of electrified chronophotography to analyze the folding of handkerchiefs and, in this case, the movements of a crippled soldier. So, Marey's work, I would claim, can be said to be the key to social modernism, but I would also claim that the images are equally fundamentally important to cultural modernism, because chronophotography radically changed the way the body was represented in the aesthetic as well as the social domain. But by the time of Marey's death, he died in 1904, the scientific and popular perception of space and time had radically changed. Late 19th century mathematicians and physicists had introduced theoretical propositions determining the existence of a space that was more than three-dimensional and even suggesting time as a fourth dimension of space. These non-Euclidean geometries could never be empirically proved, demonstrated, or representative, but they did show that our common sense notions of time and of space were conventions, not absolute categories that existed apart from the perceptual apparatus of the observer, as we were also talking about this evening. At the same time, the individual experience of the newly industrialized workplace and the new technologies that include the telephone, the telegraph, the automobile, the photograph, phonograph, the cinema, had come to foster a heightened awareness of subjective time, a sense that time proceeds at an irregular pace beyond the reckoning of any standard and authoritative system of measurement. At the core of this subjective experience of time is the moment we call now, a thickened present full of multiple events perceived simultaneously. Both the scientific dissolution of the absolute categories of time and space and the subjective sensation of simultaneity were matters of intense debate in the 1880s and 90s, and they made their way into the popular literature of the time, as you know. The picture of Dorian Gray in 1890, for example, and H.G. Wells' Time Machine in 1895. And it is part of this culture of time that Marey's images become severed from the discourse of 19th century science and one of the foundations of 20th century art. By the end of 1907, the transformation of the spatial and temporal conventions in the fine arts was accomplished by the advent of Cubism, which had absolutely nothing to do with chronophotography, let me make that clear. But for those artists who took up the Cubist investigations into a new time-space continuum, Marey's chronophotography offered the key to finally overcoming what the composer Arnold Schoenberg called the inadequacy of present language to deal with the reality of higher dimension. The graphic qualities rendered by Marey's analyses effectively dematerialized the body, operated upon it so as to free its kinetic energies and spread them across the field of vision in a dynamic, overlapping, sinuous rhythm of two-dimensional forms. Marey's photographic method did not produce pictures, as Muybridge's did, but artifacts that made visible phenomena. As such, they proved irresistible. Their depiction of chronological succession simultaneously within a single frame from a single point of view provided the vocabulary for a new language. For Franz Kupka, whom you see here, the titles have all gone. For Franz Kupka, they resolved his attempts to demonstrate the sensory experience of motion. For Marcel Duchamp, that young man on a train here, they were seized on as a mechanized and mechanical alternative to sensible beauty, enabling him to put it put, as he said, painting at the service of mind. The Italian Futurists, I'm sorry, these all have titles, and this is Boccioni's Elasticity of 1912. They adopted Marey's chronophotography, both scientifically accurate and lyrically graceful. This is Rousseau, also 1912, as a ready-made coherent system of signs to express the kinetic and emotional dimension of the object, materialize the forces of the invisible, and give visible form to speed and dynamism. This is Giacomo Balla, Rhythms of the Violinist, Dog on a Leash, sorry, and his 1913 study of movement. Marey's experiments have been reported in photographic journals in Italy, but they were brought to the futurist attention by a new adherent to their cause, Antonio Bragalia, in South Porto, you see here, who, with his brother Arturo as the camera operator, began to make what he called photodynamics in late 1911. And in 1913, Bragalia wrote a manifesto about them, which allied his work to the futurist program. In his manifesto, Bragalia decried Marey's scientificism, insisting on the aesthetic merits of his photodynamics. But the futurists repudiated both Bragalia and his images. Like most artists, the futurists were not ready for a world rendered visible by the photographic machine. They still supported the traditional hierarchy of artistic media in which painting was at the top and photography was not even considered a form of art. The futurist rejection of Bragalia blocked the synergy between the avant-garde and chronophotography, I believe. And their disdain has included the historical importance of these images. For with his adaptation of chronophotography, Bragalia actually, 1913, produced the first truly photographic avant-garde, much before those other artists who we consider as beginning the photographic avant-garde, like LSSV. Indeed, the role played by chronophotography in the early modernism, I have to say, was relatively short-lived, and not just because of the futurists. 2 world wars put paid to the prospect of rendering the passage of time as a lyrical abstraction. Late post-war technological change, beginning with mainframe computers, space, travel, television, instant globalization, fostered another new experience of time, one in which the ever-rushing pace of technology outstripped any attempts to make sense of the present. The thickened now, so imaginatively conveyed in early modernism, ceded to the sensation of a fractured, sped-up, multiplied series of infinite and disconnected moments. By the 1960s, according to Pamela Lee, whose chronophobia is one of the few studies of this subject, time became both a thematic and structural fixture, an obsession for critics, artists, and audiences of that moment. It was an obsession, however, that signaled the moment when Marey's scientific imagery was momentarily lost to modernity and Muybridge's narratives found again, particularly among American artists rejecting the emotionality of abstract expressionism. Both Muybridge's bodies and the sequential form of their presentation were seized on to suggest a temporality at once atomized, accelerated, and repetitive. Unlike Marey's chronophotography, whose presentness, that's Michael Fried's term, had become a hallmark of abstract art, Muybridge's photographs were arranged in series, and the burgeoning interest in repetition, series, and serial systems that dominated American art from the late 1950s revived animal locomotion. As Saul DeWitt said, a man running in Muybridge was my inspiration for making all the transformations of a cube within a cube, a square within a square, a cube within a square, etc. For Saul DeWitt, Christopher Cy Twombly, Jasper Johns, Robert Rauschenberg, and others. These sequences of men running or ladies weeping or taking off their clothes were the key historical referent to illustrate an embodied experience of time. This is Mel Bachman. Sorry that all the titles are lost. The embodied experience of time, the sensation of a systematic subtraction of moment from duration. Donald Judd's one thing after another that required, of course, the viewer's reconstruction from moment to moment to articulate and define. Let me conclude now. By the 1970s, artists have began to make their own series photographs, to enlist them in the critique. This is Richard Prince's living rooms. To enlist these photographs in the critique of institutional and public status of high art, in short, to enlist them in the birth of postmodernism. And that moment, as we know, saw photography itself emerge as the privileged medium of contemporary art. This is Douglas Hooper, a variation piece. Paulus Frampton, Apple Advancing Northern Spy, and Zucchini Encountering Sawhorse, Variation Red. So that moment saw photography itself emerge, postmodernism, as the privileged medium of contemporary art, and Marey's scientific photography readapted to aesthetic ends. But as that is the story that this exhibition tells so well, and as it is the subject of this afternoon's talk, I will end right at this moment. Thank you.